And welcome back to another episode of GoBeWYO. This is part 2 of our series with the Sheridan County Chamber of Commerce and Manufacturing Works in recognition of National Manufacturing Day. Today, we've got 3 in studio. I'm going to go from my left. We've got Casey Osborn, the CEO of EMIT Technologies, and we've got Clay Price of VACUTech. He is the Director of Operations. And then to his left, we have Dustin of L&H, the Director of Business Development. Correct?
That's right.
Awesome. And then on Zoom today, we've got Tim Barnes of Blacktooth Brewery and Brandon Titus, the General Manager of Koltiska Distillery. So thank you guys all for taking time out of your day to either come to the studio or jump on a Zoom call.
Morning.
So the topic we have today for you 5 is Got Grit, current challenges in manufacturing. I think there's no secret to kind of one major event that we're going to be talking about that has probably caused some issues in manufacturing. But and it's, most importantly, I think supply chains, and I think we'll have you guys all talk about that. But what supply chains issues have you guys had that maybe people wouldn't think about? And then how did you guys have to be creative about responding to those? And let's go to kind of just start. We'll start with Casey and we'll go left in the studio. And then we'll go to Brandon and Tim on the Zoom call.
Supply side, steel is a problem. In our world, we predominantly consume steel. At the same time, we have an electronics control side of the business. But I think the big thing is, the last March, April, there was all the discussion about supply issues, how it was going to be a huge problem, and then it wasn't a problem for like a year. And I think we all kind of forgot about it and didn't really plan that it was going to be an issue and weren't putting the steps in place to be prepared. And so then once, really, I think in our world, it was about 1st of January, pricing started escalating, mills capacity was not there to reach demand. And so pricing challenges, availability challenges, controls, and even more, it's impacting our customers. And so their ability to plan and their ability to get their projects rolling, it then fits with us. It's just every day, like literally every single day, there's a supply challenge, and it's on our end or the customer's end, and everyone's trying to coordinate together. And so, it makes an already stressful environment significantly more stressful. Things you never thought about, you have to think about multiple times every single day.
Yeah, I would just add to that. We've certainly seen some challenges on the, I think that have been caused by the chip shortage. I think everybody's familiar with that because the vehicles, well, that certainly has moved over and impacted us on the control side. Lead times actually up by a factor, order of magnitude, just literally overnight. And, we're in a lot of cases needing to go directly to the mill for materials as opposed to, through some sort of a supplier. And I think this is the first time in my life where I've seen multiple shelves empty at Walmart. And past life, I used to supply to them, and you were dead if you didn't do that. But across the board, it's not isolated incident for sure.
Sure.
Yeah. So we've got the same issue with raw materials. What has helped us out is we've got a very small group of suppliers. We have a good relationship with them. Those suppliers, some of them, same thing is especially like Timken Steel. They've shut their mill down. They're not taking any orders through 2022. So that forces us to go out and try to find new mills to work with. So that's been a huge challenge, just trying to get raw materials in. And then the other thing is on the supply chain side is with our international stuff. The way shipping is right now, you can't set a hard and fast date when we're going to deliver product. So now we have this, when we hand out a quote, we've got a huge disclaimer of here's the things we're not going to be liable for because the supply chain's so bad.
We control so much.
Yeah.
Brandon, Tim?
Yeah, I'm finding the same thing with raw materials, caps, labels, boxes, our bottles, lead times on those were, 2 to 3 months. And now we're seeing 6 to 8 months if we're lucky. So it's putting us rather thin. Obviously, we're running out before we'd like to. We're waiting longer than we should. And it's causing us to mass order and really kind of have inventory issues here of just space because we have to order such quantities when they are available. So it's an issue all around. They're having labor shortages on their ends, which is causing, backup like that. So yeah, it's been stressful and definitely, working around all the issues with our suppliers as well.
Same for me. It's obviously been a tricky time to try and find aluminum cans. You can't find a container to place beer in. It's difficult to package. So there's been significant supply chain challenges. Most of it's not necessarily driven by raw material shortages. There seems to be enough aluminum. It's manufacturing of containers, the actual stretching of that aluminum and building it into a can. There's numerous facilities across the country, but our scale or lack of scale in this case makes it difficult to try and source materials in the aluminum can market.
And relative to what Brandon said, one of those solutions is stocking more inventory than you used to stock. Add that to an already challenging environment. It creates unique cash flow scenarios that you haven't had before, just because you're trying to put more stuff on the ground at one time and you can't flow that material through. And it definitely complicates everything.
Absolutely. And I think too, this leads Tim and everything you guys have talked about led right into why we're having local manufacturers come in is there's the making it issue. It's not that the raw materials isn't there. It's that we can't scale and produce product. And you guys were talking about this right before we started. Parts of that for manufacturers is also finding employees and finding people with the skill and the technical knowledge to do whatever you're doing. But even before COVID, even before, the end of 2019, was there a shortage of finding manufacturer employees or people with the technical skills, I should say?
Do I have to start every time?
If you want to. whoever if you have something to say.
I guess for us, it seems like the trades in general, so machinists, welders, mechanics, there's getting less and less people being involved with that. I know that, the machine tool center here in Sheridan has had a difficult time finding and retaining instructors to start with. And then plus just getting kids in to learn a trade is difficult because we're so used to sitting on computers, which in real life, a CNC machine's a big old computer, right? But the thought of having to stand and stare at a computer screen is, I guess, different than sitting and staring at a computer screen. I don't know. So,
I think we've been somewhat effective in getting some folks in, but I'm concerned about kind of path forward with some of the projections that we have. It certainly is a challenge. It's certainly a challenge to find the skill set you need, and you have to do some stuff that maybe we didn't have to in the past to get those folks in and to retain them. I think getting somebody to come here from a distance is a real challenge, and maybe we're going to touch on that a little bit more, but that's been one of the things that's limited our ability to bring folks in as well.
Interestingly enough, we had more people from the East Coast, machinists in particular, come out west during COVID than we hired a guy from Virginia, and that's never furthest we've ever been over was, I think, Michigan. So,
wow.
And I would answer the question that I feel like that's a perpetual business challenge. Maybe it's been magnified through COVID, but I don't feel like it's necessarily unique at this point in time. There's always challenges with finding good talent, bringing them in, getting them integrated into your system. But I don't really feel like there's anything special that's been a unique challenge related to COVID of staffing. Sure. There's many other issues that are challenges that are not COVID related.
And we'll get into those. Brandon, Tim, finding employees.
Fortunately for us, as a true small business here, we run on a fairly small crew, and we've had real fortune with some long-term employees. So we haven't had issues with hiring and firing or anything like that. So it hasn't really affected us.
Yeah, we haven't had any issues from the manufacturing element. There's certainly been longstanding employees that have been at Blacktooth from our brewery production perspective, but we have faced some challenges in the hospitality end of it. The front-facing staff with serving has always been a challenge, and I would agree with Casey. Certainly, that's a perpetual challenge. It's not necessarily driven specifically by COVID.
Awesome. And this leads us right into the next question. For you guys probably have other problems you guys have had to face the last 2 years. What were those? And then what was your guys' business's response to that? And how did it, change your business or business model? Casey kind of already hit on, the supply chain and inventory and all that stuff, but maybe some other things people might not know affects your guys' businesses that you guys had to respond and change and adapt.
So I would say, if we're specifically speaking about COVID, which I think we are, mm-hmm. We certainly took a conservative route at that point in time and pulled way back and then built from there and I think that was generally the responsible thing to do. Caused some problems for some of the employees and challenges, but we worked through that. However, since then, dealing with specific pop-up incidents and exposure and how to respond to those. When you've got commitments and you're running very single piece flow kind of projects through your system, and you instantly have a crew that has to be out. That's a pretty difficult thing to respond to. And we already touched on, the personnel and the skills needed for some of those specific roles. You don't necessarily want to take welders, make them powder coaters, assembling turbines or whatever it might actually be. So that's been one of the biggest hurdles for us, is those unplanned disruptions that we don't have a great way to respond to.
Sure.
I don't have anything too special, but to that point, I think a lot of continuity comes from having a clear line of sight into the future. And that's the biggest challenge right now is, all of the variables that are, in every day, there's a lot of variables outside of your control. But there starts to be some predictability to those trends. And when you lose an entire crew with no heads up for 10 days, it puts a massive wrinkle in your system. And so, just perpetually dealing with those challenges. I think everyone's been very resilient through the process, but it doesn't make it easy.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing too is, so with the production people, our mindset at LNH is always those guys have to show up in the facility to do their job, to where overhead they can do their work from home. So there was, although we were getting teams going before COVID hit, we sent everybody home, and then you have to sit there and watch and say, well, who's productive at home and who's not? And then you have groups that hate working from home. And people that love it. So you got to juggle all of those things. Mm-hmm. And it seems like, the work from home thing has worked very well for us. I know that there's some industries that are actually pulling people back into the offices because they think productivity went down, but that's always been a challenge. So,
sure.
The biggest thing for us specifically was the pivot when they shut all of the bars and restaurants across the country down, was the pivot to 100% packaged beer and nothing in kegs for draft beer. And then immediately everybody came back open and they were wondering why in the heck they didn't have draft beer anywhere. So it was a challenge to make that pivot and then maintain the level of production necessary to keep up with demand for a very short period of time.
Very similar for us, obviously losing, 2/3 of your customers with bars and restaurants, and just simply going to, home drinkers and things like that. Marketing challenge, just trying to focus all efforts into that, trying cocktail recipe and things like that so people can enjoy. If you remember back, March, April of 2020, when grocery shelves were fairly empty, People didn't have access to everything that they were used to. So we put out a series of videos trying to create simple recipes people could find with maybe things they still had at their home or things they could still find in the grocery store. So yeah, definitely a huge change there for our marketing.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing kind of everyone's adaptation, to be resilient, to just get through it. Is there anything else you guys did to, or looking back, you're like, it was rough making that change, but in the next couple of years, you guys are looking back and saying, that was probably a good thing to make, in regards to people working at home or working in the office. Was that something you guys were kind of in the back of your mind, like, at some point this was going to happen, or was it kind of a complete shock of this actually works out pretty well for some people at home?
Yeah, I think for us, it was kind of a shock that it worked as well as it did.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's really nice about it is we were running out of office space, and if we don't have to take our resources and fund a new office complex, I mean, that's great. Now there's some HR challenges that come in with working from home. If they roll back and, roll their ankle in their quote unquote home office, who's liable? You got all those challenges, but in general, it's really nice to allow your people. I think they're more productive at home, or is what we've seen. When I made that transition to home personally, it was a lot of catch up because you don't have as many people swinging into the office and for the chit chat. So it was amazing what a guy can get done when you're isolated. Now, I think that isolation, the bad thing about isolation is you don't have the camaraderie, that office camaraderie. You lose out on that. So you have to work as a leader to keep that generated and keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it worked surprisingly well for us. We were doing things that we didn't think we could do at a distance. I would still argue that if you're not sitting in the same room with somebody, even if you're looking at them on Google Meets or whatever it might be, there's something lost there. So we've still tried to move back in that particular direction. But our ability to function, given some of those limitations, I was really impressed with the way that the folks responded, and the tools work pretty good. So happy to be where we're at.
Well, and I think a couple things that are takeaways is like to what Tim was saying, like sometimes you just got to make a decision that's helpful for 2 months. Like hey, no kegs for a while. We're going to go cans. We're just going to make this work. And then you can go back. But it's like, the ability to adapt to a certain situation, make the most of it, not think that everything is a permanent solution or, we have to overthink it. Like, no, this is good for today. Let's go down that course. And then, more data points come in, we got to shift again. We'll make quick decisions. So quick decisions and the ability to not just overthink everything. I think there's plenty of good examples that there's lots of benefit from decisiveness. From a staffing side and a work from home, I mean, at EMIT, no one wanted to work from home. Like, I mean, it was like when we were like, okay, go work from home. Like everyone showed up the next day.
Yeah.
No one wanted to leave. And so then, but I mean, some people did in very, certain circumstances dependent, but I think it's changed our staffing approach to maybe some administrative admin type employees, engineers, whatever. Like if a guy in Arkansas wants a job and doesn't want to move to Wyoming, like hire him in Arkansas and let him work in Arkansas. Like, that acceptance that you don't really have to be in the same space. Yeah, there's challenges to it. And, face to face, I'd always say is better. But where there's talent and where there's people, looking for opportunities and you form those relationships, the acceptance of like, no, just work from home. Don't move here. Don't add that cost and get started right away. I think that's been very helpful to us.
That leads us right into our kind of next question. We kind of already hit on it too a little bit. Would you say that's a solution to kind of hiring, finding the right people to join your team? Is that a solution to where, well, we don't have to move them here, because that's housing here is an issue. What other issues do you guys have in recruiting and getting new employees? There's that option, remote. but what are some other solutions that you guys have all looked at?
Well, given the fact that we're all
Everybody's tried to
manufacturing,
make beer in their garage, but it's really difficult to sell the beer that you make in your garage. So we've really had to have everybody on site.
yes, that's what I was just going to say. Like, given the fact that we're all manufacturing companies, the vast majority of our workforce, you got to be present. So I don't think it doesn't hit like, I mean, shoot, no one pays for anything we do in the office. They only pay for what we do on the floor. And so, in that sense, to move the business forward, we have to have that production personnel in Sheridan. And that does not solve the housing problem we have.
Right.
No, and I think we touched on something earlier that has caused the housing problem. We talked about the influx of people coming from the cities here. And so I'd say from that perspective, it's made it worse. So while it has helped us, maybe some of the professional level folks, we can work at a distance. Well, the same thing is happening. A lot of people want to move to Sheridan or surrounding areas that are working remotely other places. And I think that's driven some of those costs up, which has made it a challenge to we're competing for these folks that actually have to be on the floor building the product every day.
Dustin, anything to add there? Or Brandon?
I think they said it best.
Yeah.
So no,
Awesome.
I have nothing to add.
No, that's great. I do want to we're kind of switching gears here because I want to leave this last question for the end because I feel like all your guys are going to have a great answer here. But we kind of touched on kind of foreign and domestic competition in regards to supply chains, and then everyone globally is trying to find products. What does that look like? I am curious. I'll give it to the brewers and distillers first because that there's a lot of competition locally and regionally for the microbreweries. What did that competition look like in regards to just your guys' manufacturing and supply chains? Brandon and Tim.
Yeah, I guess nothing too much has changed here in Wyoming. There's a few more distilleries now than there was before. We all kind of see ourselves, though, as on the same team, competing against, the Jack Daniels and the Absolutes of the world and things like that. So, obviously there's some competition between us, but we don't really view it that way so much. We kind of see ourselves as on the same team. The real big challenge is getting products out to, unique markets and things like that. So we get a lot of tourists that come into the state, try our products, take bottles back home to their friends. And then I get emails, phone calls, Facebook requests and things like that, trying to get our product to their home state where we're not currently available. So our biggest challenges right now is trying to get into all of these markets. Liquor is tough. We can't just ship it through the mail to people. It's illegal. So it's finding other routes. It's finding online suppliers and things like that to carry your product. But every craft distiller is trying to do the exact same thing. So these suppliers can only house so much product, so much unique product before they're saying no to people. So it's trying to reach these new markets in an affordable way for us. As it costs money to do business in each state. There's, permits, license fees to do business in each state each year. And then, of course, trying to find distributors within those states that will handle your product responsibly and, try to do its best to move it off the shelf. So, there's lots of challenges, just domestic here. Foreign, we've started looking. We have meetings with suppliers in Canada currently and Germany that have been put on hold. We had a meeting set up for 2020 in Germany with a couple that was interested in bringing our product in there. But of course, that's all been put on hold for the time being. So that's where we stand currently, is just trying to reach new markets as affordably as possible.
And you have
I don't have much to add to that.
There's ways to get them in other states, but
there's nothing to add there, Tim, right?
No, I don't. I think Brandon touched on it very, very well. The challenges have been similar for the craft beer distributor, the craft beer business, as it has been in spirits. The ability to get your product into the willing consumer's hands is always a challenge.
So I'll post that same question to you guys here in the studio because a little different businesses. But Dustin, you kind of were touching on it a little bit. One thing is just the ship, the timeline. Like I don't know when it's going to get there. That's just kind of how everything is right now.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is with any business, it doesn't matter. Technology's changing, access to intellectual property. They've got scanners now to where on large mechanical parts, you can go and scan a whole part and you've got that IP that fast. And then the world's smaller, so everybody knows who's playing in the game. And while it's rarely a shock if you find out somebody else is pouring a product or manufacturing a product, it just seems like the world's getting smaller and everybody's competing. It's frustrating just because it used to be you had an engineering team, they would go out and RE a complete, assembly, and you could produce that and compete against just the OEM. Well, now it's so darn easy to get prints that it's not a competitive advantage anywhere. So therefore, there's more people competing.
Gotcha.
Well, to us, I think the foreign market side of it is relative to the shipping challenge and many other things. But like, there's no foreign steel available in the U.S. market. And so the U.S. mills have taken full advantage of that.
Sure.
And so there's really no competing from a U.S. mill standpoint. And so, like, truly, we paid ballpark 30 cents a pound for steel, and right now we pay $1.20 a pound for steel.
Wow.
Like, and most of what we build is out of steel. And so that there's no availability. You pay 4 times as much for a pound of material as you used to. Until there is more supply in the market, the U.S. market, will continue to pay exorbitant rates.
Right.
And you can't get steel in like off the water, but it's starting to show up. So there's some hope in sight.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a whole lot to add. It's maybe like we touched on. I think the only thing is making sure that we do everything we can to keep our customers from being surprised. Yes. And so we've put specific protocols in place. The instant we find things out, we give the bad news.
Yep.
And we've assigned belly buttons to that to make sure that happens. And still some folks get surprised, but that's one of the mitigating things that we've tried to do.
Sure.
Well, the other thing that I think that manufacturers have to keep in mind is our companies aren't the only ones doing it to your end customer, right?
Yep.
We are getting... Our vendors are late to us. We're late to our customers. It's everybody's in it together.
Right.
Yep.
And so,
the competitive advantage is transparency right now.
Yeah.
Like
that's exactly right.
If you're quiet and like everyone's surprised, then you have a problem.
Yeah.
If you're communicating, you're keeping everyone in the loop, which takes time, effort. People got to do it, and you got to somewhat have some clarity as to what is going to happen in the future. And that's hard to know what that clarity is right now. But to the best of your ability, it's constant communication.
Yep.
That was wonderful, though. That was great. And I think this last question leads right into what we're just talking about. If you guys feel comfortable sharing or if something comes to mind, tell us the time where the business or you in particular, maybe in your guys' positions, that you guys had to go to extreme lengths to solve a problem, whether that be for a customer, a client, or maybe for the team, for the business. So what extreme lengths you guys went to solve that problem? We'll pitch this first to the guys on Zoom, Brandon or Tim there.
Sure. So starting at the end of March 2020, we started process file paperwork with the FDA to register the facility for manufacturing hand sanitizer. We did so successfully and almost changed our distillery completely into a hand sanitizer manufacturer. We ended up donating to 6 different counties here in Wyoming for hospital, EMS, fire, and police, over 2,000 gallons of hand sanitizer. Also, a waiting list for locals here in town to buy, produce it as quickly as we could produce it. So, yeah, it was definitely a challenge going into something I've never done before, learning about the entire process, sourcing the raw material, and then obviously executing successfully to get people a product that was desperately needed at that time. It was a huge challenge. We were working the longest hours when lots of people were staying home. We were staying late. It was definitely an interesting challenge. And for about 3 months there, it was running.
Awesome. Tim?
I think you lost him.
Might have lost him. But there is an update available.
One of you guys want to take that real quick as we go through this technical difficulty?
I guess that one of the biggest challenges that I remember, we had a customer that ordered up the large components. We had a foundry that we'd been working with for 17 years. It was a family business in South America, and that ownership had changed guard. So we went through and had 100% confidence in the foundry. They poured the product. We get it on the water, shipping it up, and we just wanted to do a double check, some first article inspections and stuff, and the product was not good. So before it hit the customer site, we went up there, flew up there, and
recording in progress.
Fell on our swords, and you know what? They put that product on, they ran it until we could get a brand new product, and it all went just as good as you could ask for. We retained the customer. Didn't look so good on our books, but it is what it is. So I think the biggest thing is what my uncle has always taught me is you just go fess up and fall on your sword, and usually it works out a lot better than trying to hide it or make it the customer's problem. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very similar example that I was going to use. I try not to fall on the sword too many times, but especially with the same customer. But the example I was thinking of, we had a customer that's having a problem, and I think as a custom manufacturer, you tend to put some of your innovations and new designs out there as part of a sale, and it's something you can't completely get away from. You try to. So we had a new customer. We put a brand new product line out. It was a wet dry separating process on a conveyor line with cars moving through, and this particular customer, I don't even think they understood their application. They didn't understand exactly what they were getting into, but they opened up. Dry run was fine. They opened up and began to see some challenges. So, we went through a couple iterations, and it was obvious that that wasn't going to solve the problem. So, and this is a credit to the Tuckers and kind of how they've ran that business. But we jumped on a plane, flew there the next morning, and the president of the organization was standing there at the base of my ladder while I was working on the controls, and over the course of 2 days, completely rebuilt their system and had it up and going by the end of that 2 days. And since then, I think we've had five, probably more than that, probably closer to 10 new systems from this customer. And that particular, the books didn't look real great on that particular one. That wasn't a cheap flight, but I think it's paid itself over many, many times. And that's just making sure that you take care of that customer and own up to what happened and then solve the problem. This particular case, that worked out very well, and they're a great customer for us today. So
I don't have anything too insightful. I think if the topic of this was grit, the last 18 months have required a lot of it. And the challenges that we have, there's a lot of things that come from those challenges that don't necessarily look as good on the books. But the perseverance that's required, I think it'd be really, really easy as a manufacturer right now in this environment to just lay down, like to just have every excuse possible for why you can't do it or you can't try or why you shouldn't do those things. But, I guess, when you have a business that builds things, I think you become pretty innovative. You in one way or another have to figure it out. And the last 18 months, 20 months, whatever it's been, it's forced us to have to live that ethos. So I don't feel like it's too different. Like, we always have to solve problems. It just comes with the territory. When you have to build something, you got to build it every single time. We're not software companies. We don't release something and it carries. We have to do it every single time.
I love that. And, I apologize. We lost Brandon and Tim there, but what you guys said was great. That it doesn't always look good on the books, but that's kind of the industry you guys are in. And that's, the types of businesses and people you guys are looking for, and that's just how it is. And some takeaways I took from this topic today was resilience, and adapt. You got to change and adapt and make those split second decisions and just go for it and take action. So I don't know, Brandon, can you hear us? We got Brandon back.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys all for coming in today. Is there anything I forgot that you guys wanted to hit on or anything like that? This is shameless plug time for your business or for your companies. No?
No, I think, what we didn't really talk about, but we do have a housing problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can solve it. But it's, same thing. It's going to take some resiliency. It's going to take some vision. It's going to take some risk. But it is a problem. Like, it is a massive problem.
Absolutely.
So if anyone on the chamber is listening to this podcast, we can put our heads together.
Yeah.
And like, it's going to take some action, not just some talking too.
Yes. Love that.
Agreed.
I'm not up here, so I don't know. I always hear about the other thing I hear, and I don't know if this is true or not, but Sheridan is right behind Jackson as far as low wage, high cost of living. And I'm not sure if that's true or not, but
definitely
that makes
that
it
way. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it very difficult if you got, low wage, high cost of living. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but
I'm not the sort of guy that's like, hey, we just need to keep some outsiders in or out. Bring them in. Like, we can figure it out.
Yep.
Sheridan, there's challenges that as a community we have to overcome. And I think we can overcome them. If we get hunkered down, we all just collectively make excuses. There's no growth in that.
Yep. Well, as this topic was grit, and how you guys adapted to those problems, we've got a problem. Let's like you said, let's come together and let's solve the problem. But I will say, Tim texted me, and this will end us out pretty good. His biggest challenge has been keeping up with wacky technology glitches. So not sure what happened on the Zoom call there, but we appreciate